You need to be able to pay 100% of the rent no matter how many people are staying in that house. Period. Hold on, let me see myself. Hey y'all, it's Tia Moore bringing you Moments of More. I am back with my ice cream. We got raw ice cream. Let me tell y'all what I got, because I don't think I told y'all last time. So this is a create your own rolled ice cream. So you get to pick a base, mix-ins, and toppings in a sauce. So my base is sweet cream. My mix-in is Fruity Pebbles. My sauce is condensed milk. And then my toppings is rainbow sprinkles and Fruity Pebbles. I normally get white chocolate chips as well, but they didn't have it today. And I don't care about the calorie police because this is good. And I wanted me something sweet, so I came and got it. Okay. I only have like 17 minutes. I only have less than 20 minutes on this SD card, so I'm gonna try to make this quick. But today I'm gonna be talking to y'all about an apartment. I've been living on my own for 2 years because I'm not counting me being an undergrad. So I've been on my own as in paying rent for 2 years now. And I've lived with roommates and I live by myself. So I just have a couple of tips that I want to give y'all when it comes to getting an apartment, living on your own, or living independently if you're not necessarily on your own but you're paying for all of your bills. And I just want to give y'all a couple tips for some of the things that I picked up along the way. I think I have like 7 or 8 things that I wrote down. So we about to get into it, y'all. I just got to get a couple scoops of my ice cream because low-key, raw ice cream do taste a little better when it's done sat and melted for a little bit. So I'm about to eat this, then we're gonna get into it. So when it comes to things to consider when getting your apartment, if I'm looking over to the side, y'all, it's because my phone is here. But yeah. So when it comes to things to think about when getting an apartment, I like to think about the 30% rule. Let me explain to y'all the 30% rule if y'all don't know it already. So basically the 30% rule says that you should not spend no more than 30% of your gross monthly income, gross being your before tax incomes, before taxes are taken out. You should not spend more than 30% of your gross income on rent or just mortgage alone. That means that you take however much money, even if you get paid weekly, times about 4. If you get paid every 2 weeks, times about 2. However much money your net, however much money your gross pay is for the month, you times that by 30%, and that is the amount that your rent should be at or under. You really don't want to go over it, but there are times where you can go over it. But first we're going to talk about why you don't want to go over it if you can avoid it. So basically, the reason that they have the 30% rule is because we know that rent isn't going to be the only thing that a person is paying for. You can have things like your phone bill, your car payment, your car insurance, if you have a gym membership, if you have a kid or a pet, you can have daycare expenses. All of those other things come out as well as rent when it comes to your money that you're getting paid each month. So the reason that they say keep the base rent at 30% or less is because you don't want to be paying 50% of your monthly income to your rent alone, and then when all your other expenses come in, you either have no money and you're in the negative. You either have no money or you're in the negative for the month, because that's just poor budgeting. That's poor money planning. Obviously, there are going to be times where you cannot help it and you will go over 30%. But ideally, you want to stay at or under 30% for that very reason, because they say there's this like quote, or I heard somebody say, where a lot of people are just one paycheck away from poverty. So it's like, if you are trying to push it with the amount of your monthly income that goes to rent, if you're trying to push it with that, you missing a day of work or you hurting yourself and being out a couple days from work can make the difference between you making your rent payment or making any of your bills on time payment or not making it at all. I recently made a video talking about how to pay all your bills on time, and I gave like different little strategies you can use. So if that's something that you're interested in, go look at it, because it's out there for y'all. But basically, the reason that you don't want to go over this 30% is because we know that there are other things that come into play, whether it be bills, whether it be maintenance expenses, like you getting your hair done, haircut, nails done, you getting your wax, you getting your lashes, you want to hang out with your friends, you just want to go get something to eat. Like, all of these other expenses come out aside of your rent. So it's like, you don't want your rent to take up too much of your monthly income, because then after you pay rent, what else? You don't want to have an apartment and you ain't got no food. You don't want to have an apartment and you don't have no furniture. There's nothing wrong with that being the case at the start, but you don't want that to be a continuous thing, because at that point you weren't really ready for that apartment. You weren't really ready to be living independently. But there are going to be some cases, so there's a follow-up behind that. Hold on, let me make sure I'm telling y'all the right thing. So even though, listen now, hear me out, this is like a you gotta kind of take this with a grain of salt. Pick out what worked for you. Even though you have the tip of not letting your rent be more than 30% of your gross income, there are exceptions for when this is okay. And the next tip is to not just look at rent, because when you think about it, your rent could be more than the 30%, but if there are things included in the rent that would be related to another expense that you would have to pay outside of the 30% rule, like say for instance, I feel like I'm doing a lot of yapping. Let me just give examples because I feel like that's the easiest way for me to explain it. Say for instance, once you do your calculation of what your 30% is, you're not supposed to go over, let's say, $1,300 a month for rent. Okay, say after you did your expenses, your rent could be no more than $1,300 base rent. Now let's say you go tour this apartment, you like it, it look good, it got everything you want. It got the granite countertops, it got a washer and dryer in there, they got valet trash, they come with Wi-Fi, they got a pool, they got an on-site gym, they have events at they leasing office every month or every few weeks, they got food trucks coming out there for y'all every Friday, all these other things. If there's a situation where your rent is more than a 30%, but that rent also includes things like utility expenses or something that you would normally pay for outside of rent, there is some wiggle room for you to go above the 30% rule, because some of those expenses that you would normally be paying outside of rent is included in your rent. So those are the exceptions of when you can go over it, but for the most part, you want to try to stay at or under that 30% rule. And honestly, under is better, but if you have to, you gotta do what you gotta do. There's sometimes we just can't avoid it, but this is just ideally speaking. Now the next tip is to make sure that you're touring your apartment in person. Y'all, they're gonna make these virtual tours and these pictures of these apartments and these videos of these places look so grand because they want you to come stay in there. But at the end of the day, I mean, I don't know, I feel like looks can be deceiving when it comes to pictures. Some things you just have to see in person, because you can look at somebody, like for instance, people be catfishing apartments. Y'all don't think so? People catfish apartments. Y'all ever see a person who look good in person? I mean, y'all ever see a person who look good on their pictures, but then you see them in person, it's like, oh, jump scare. Or if it's like, you ain't look like that on that picture. That's how they do with apartments. They are catfishing y'all with apartments at times. Yeah, it's happening. It's happening, and y'all are falling for it. So tour your apartment in person. Do not sign no lease for no apartment. I don't even care if you have to see a model unit. People be like, oh, don't tour model units. There are going to be situations where you cannot tour the exact unit that you're going to be moving in due to timing issues. But in the same sense, at least tour some apartment. If you can't tour the exact apartment you're going to be moving into, go tour the model. I know the model is going to look better than the apartment you're going to be moving into, but at least tour something in person. Don't sign no lease just because you saw some pictures online. Please don't do that. That's one of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to apartments. Do not sign no lease just because you saw some cute pictures online. Then you get in there and it look like a dumpster. The next tip is to talk to people who live in the area. 9 times out of 10, especially if you're going to tour something in person, you might see somebody who already stayed there. Ask them, like, look, what's your honest opinion? Because some people, their lease probably about to be up. So they're going to tell y'all, nah, man, I'm about to, once my lease in, I'm out of here. I'll never move in here again. I'll never recommend nobody come here. I would never recommend this apartment complex to anybody. Take this into account, because at the end of the day, that person could be saving y'all a lot of money. I feel like it's important to talk to the neighbors too, because it's just good to know who you stay around. And then it's also good to just kind of get a friendly face, because you never know. Y'all, the apartment complex you're looking into could have a referral program. So somebody you met in the parking lot on the way to your tour or after your tour could refer you to the apartment complex. Now they get $100 or $300. They get something off their rent. You get something off your rent, all because you said hey to somebody and asked them how their experience has been. Listen, y'all, it's all kind of ways to get this working. So the next part is regarding leases. Let me tell y'all about leases. I said in the beginning that I've lived with roommates and I've lived by myself. When I lived with roommates, I had a separate lease from my roommates. So we all lived in the same apartment, but we lived in a per space apartment. So it wasn't like for this whole apartment, y'all pay $2,000 total each month. No, it was I had my own separate lease. My roommate had her own separate lease. Our other roommate had her own separate lease. Our other roommate had her own separate lease. And the importance of this is that if one of those girls were to mess up or not make their payment on time, that did not affect me in my living space. I knew that as long as I paid my amount of money every single month, I was straight. I didn't have to worry about getting evicted or lights getting cut off, water getting cut off, Wi-Fi not working, none of that. No, because we have separate leases. There are gonna be situations where separate leases aren't an option, but one of my pro tips is to move into a apartment that's like geared towards college students or close to a college campus, because normally they're the type of apartments that will do the per bed space type lease and the separate leases, so that if your roommate miss out on her payment, you're not missing out on your living space because you're straight. Now, in an event where you can't have separate leases, do not get an apartment and do not sign a lease to an apartment if you cannot pay 100% of that lease. I don't care if this is your best friend of 15 years and y'all been knowing each other since y'all was 10. I don't care. If you cannot afford that rent by yourself, do not move into that apartment. There's been so many times I've heard of people getting apartments because they were looking at the idea of them paying half of the rent so they could afford half of the rent, but then the person who they were staying with left. I don't care if this is your friend, I don't care if this is your boyfriend, I don't care if it's your sister, I don't care if it's your cousin, I don't care if it's your god brother. Do not move in with people unless you could pay 100% of that rent, because at the end of the day, if that person was to up and decide that they wanted to move tomorrow, would you still be able to make that payment on it first? If the answer is no, you don't need to be in that apartment. I don't care how much you trust this person. If you cannot get separate leases, you need to make sure that you can pay that 100% rent by yourself. That's not to say that you have to pay it every month, but there could be a situation where they just had a hard month, so they may need you to cover it until they get paid again. You need to be able to pay 100% of the rent no matter how many people are staying in that house, period. That's just because at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you got a place to lay your head and that nobody's interfering with that. The next tip is to document everything. Y'all, I'm about to tell y'all a story with my own personal apartment complex that I'm gonna tell y'all a story about an apartment complex that I lived in before, who tried to play in my face about some stuff, but I had that document so they couldn't do nothing about it. So, okay, I'm gonna try to make this story a long story short. So basically, whenever I was getting ready to move into my apartment, they had this promotion going on where the second month of rent was free. So it's like I had to pay the first month rent plus the security deposit and all the extra fees to move in, but that second month where it came time to pay rent, I was not supposed to pay anything. And they had this promotion going on their website. I only saw this because I saw it on the website. So I was talking to the leasing consultant. Mind you, I emailed the leasing consultant and I said, hey, I know, because I had just went in person. I knew of the apartment complex, so I just went in person to go do a tour, talk to them. But once I saw their promotion online, because I had to go do the actual application online, I said, hey, I'm planning to sign my lease soon. I see that y'all have this promotion going on. Is there anything extra that I need to do to be included in this promotion? He said, no, as long as you have communication with someone and we have it written down somewhere that you signed your lease by this time, you'll be straight for the promotion. Cool. So I move in, I pay all my fees. Why that next month come and they're sitting here emailing me telling me that I have a bill due? I'm like, no, I don't. They're like, yes, you do. You have a bill due. I said, no, my second month of rent was it's non-existent. I wasn't supposed to pay anything for the second month. And I literally talked to the lady and she's like, what do you mean? I said, because when I signed my lease, there was a promotion that if you signed by a certain time, you would not have to pay rent for the second month. So the only thing I was supposed to pay was the $65 utility fee. And she basically tried to pull the whole, there's no way for us to say that's what the website said, because obviously at this point it's months later, so the announcement isn't on the website anymore. There was like a pop-up, like as soon as you search up the apartment complex, there was a pop-up, oh, sign your lease by this date, get a month free. Mind you, I had screenshots because my mama has always taught me to document everything. I took screenshots and it literally said, oh, if you sign it by this date. I took a screenshot of my lease showing that my lease was DocuSign, so it had a digital signature that it was signed by that date. And I forwarded them the email when I asked their leasing consultant, hey, what extra do I need to do to be included in this promo? And he said nothing. I said, per communications from the website and with the leasing consultant and with the day that my lease was signed via the digital signature, I shouldn't have to pay anything. I bet you I didn't have to pay anything. But the crazy thing is, if I didn't have that, they really would have tried to play it like I was lying. Do not go off word of mouth. You need it written. You need a paper trail. I don't care if it's an email. I don't care if it's a text message. I don't care if it's you recording a conversation. But just going off the conversation, don't just take anything word of mouth. It's not worth it ever. And then that was the last tip, is just document everything. That was a couple things. If y'all have any specific questions when it comes to apartments, I am fully open about my experience. I'm not gonna tell y'all where I live at the moment because that's too much. But if there's any questions I can answer, just let me know. Those are my few little tips. Anybody else who's living in an apartment or living independently, y'all come with y'all experience. Y'all come with some tips. If y'all have questions, let me know. I'll see y'all in the next one. Have a good one.